And we're live. Good morning, good evening, and good night to anyone else watching. Um, this is a scene for Hong Kong House of Cards. The scene is between Dimitri of the, formerly of the Progenitors, and Ziyi, Devil Tiger. Over the past week, they've maintained their correspondence, had an occasional dinner or so. But tonight is slightly different. Instead of going to her place for dinner, he's invited her to the warehouse. Not so much for dinner, so much as just a sort of a tour. If she arrives, it looks like a very nondescript warehouse. Nothing unusual from the outside. Just looks like it's, out of use, just like a normal place. Any warehouse that's not being filled at the moment. There might be a vehicle parked in the vicinity, but it's nothing special. It's probably like a white windowless van. Nothing suspicious about that.
Ziyi arrives in. She's quite curious, as most felines are. She's kind of like looks over the parking space after her driver delivers her to her requested destination. And she'll kind of look over this white van and look inside just to kind of get a gist and maybe peruse the license plate before she makes her way to the door of this warehouse. She stands in front of it before like knocking or anything like that, just kind of like taking it in. She doesn't like the energy that she spiritually believes that Rundown Things represents, but that feeling is only manifested on her face as like a slight kind of like frown before she knocks.
Well, when she knocks on the door, there's a little viewport. It opens up. There's a man who she hasn't seen before, looks out, and he asks in English, though he's like, speaking slowly just in case she's not familiar with the language. What do you want?
Ziyi. She smiles and she says, Ziyi. Me Ziyi.
Kind of frowns like he thinks he's being made fun of, but he's not sure. So he kind of like leans back, closes the viewport. You might hear some muttering, and then like an electronic. Well, then there's a response, which is clearly coming through like on intercom or something. And then he just opens up the door, and the guy, now that you can see him, is garbed in what seems to be some sort of security detail uniform, but it's not one you're familiar with. It just looks very nondescript. He's armed with an AR-15, which is currently holstered just over his shoulder. He's not using it. But the two guys who were flanking him in covering positions, theirs were raised, but now are lowering. They're putting the safeties back on. Apparently someone takes security very seriously here.
Not seriously enough if they're lowering them. That's what Ziyi thinks, but she just...
Oh, yeah.
But that's what she thinks, what she doesn't say.
Fair enough. And as soon as she enters, they close the door behind her. She'd hear over the intercom, which there seems to be one located right near the door. Glad you arrived. Come towards the center of the building, if you would.
Of course, she'll say, and she'll kind of like...
It's obviously Dimitri. Sorry, I should have specified.
Yeah, I kind of assumed. She'll begin walking to the center of the warehouse, and she'll kind of give like the guy that kind of looked through the peephole, kind of like a smile, like as she walks, looking over the corner of her shoulder, kind of enticing him to enjoy the view as she does, as she moves.
He blushes and gets slapped on top of the head by one of the other guards. Brannigan has a rough life.
Oh no, this is Brannigan. He always gets picked on. Half pay, now this.
Exactly. Anyways, so I should describe the rest of the interior.
Okay.
From the outside, it looks like a rundown warehouse. From the inside, they've obviously put a lot of effort into repairing it, cleaning it. and modernizing it. There's lab equipment in various locations, terminals, workbenches, what looks like a 3D printer in one section, a centrifuge in another. They've got a lot of stuff set up here, which looks very eclectic. Like there's a lot of possible tools here. There's a separate workstation for Asuka's section, which is much more filled with robotics and mechanical Waldos and stuff like that. Dimitri's section is located in another corner, which is more beakers, vials, concoctions, that sort of thing. Biochemistry, what can I say? And in the center is a area which is actually cordoned off with thick plastic sheeting. You may notice also it looks like people have started putting up barrier tape. Like essentially it's outlining what would clearly be some kind of internal floor plan. Right now it's just plastic sheeting on rails, but obviously there's plans for them to make it into an actual, walls, floors, and so on.
Right.
Someone started sketching it out, but they haven't gotten far with it. The part that's in the middle is it's not easy for her to see unless she actually goes past the plastic cordon, but once she does, there's 6 pillars, essentially. The center one, it's like a pentagram, and then one in the middle. The one in the middle is a computer. It's very tall, it's bulky, it's also extremely advanced. This is looks like something out of, Star Wars or something. It's very advanced.
That will catch and hold ZV's attention for a little bit as she's walking towards the center of the room.
And the 5 pillars around it are actually, as she'll notice, vats. They probably remind her of what you would see in a biology teacher's, lab, where they've preserved specimens.
Okay.
The glass is semi-opaque, and the liquid inside is brown and murky. But you can definitely see there's some sort of shape in each one of the 5 vats. And the vats are connected overhead by cabling to the computer device. Computer device has a large monitor. I forget what special abilities Kuei-jin have for sensing stuff, but if you're able to sense life signs, there's something alive in each of the 5 vats.
Yeah, it's just like a lot of characters, they have a lot of abilities, but it has to be, they're all things that need to be activated, nothing that's typically on, quote unquote on at all times.
Fair enough. I'll try and remember. Sorry.
No. Anytime she does something like that, or freaky or stupid or outside of the human norm, I'll definitely let you know. Hey,
okay.
I'll spend a point of demon chi to turn it to a weird freaky thing,
Brannigan's like they're better the other way. Okay, so Dimitri's actually in the center area, or arrives there maybe a second after her, I should say. And he nods towards her and then gestures to the computer device, which has a big monitor. This is the centerpiece, you might say. His name is Cabal.
You named it.
It was originally the designation for it, but it's stuck. He likes the name. Computer-assisted biologically augmented life form. It's sort of a hybrid between technological intelligence and artificial intelligence and biological intelligence.
She smirks at that, but primarily because she just thinks it's kind of like a human kind of frailty to project affection onto an inanimate thing. So she just kind of smirks at that.
Then the monitor turns on and you see a face, which I'm going to link. It seems to be live, and it looks at her, blinks, very slowly, and then just kind of looks back over at out of character. I loathe playing Cabal because Brett does such a better job of it than me. So I try to keep these interactions as brief as possible.
Totally understandable. Totally understandable.
It's like being told you gotta,
yeah, go ahead.
It's like being told you got to play Gandalf. It's like, oh no, come on, really. Anyways,
Yeah.
exactly. So he just kind of looks at her and just frowns a little bit, and then just deactivates. But there's a look of intelligence in those eyes. It's definitely not just a computer. This thing is actually intelligent and has a personality. Might not be the friendliest one either, if she's any judge of facial expressions.
Friendly doesn't equate to good in Ziyi's kind of like experience. So she's still not sure what to make of that phase. Because computers can duplicate a wide range of things for a wide range of reasons. But she kind of mentally notes that perhaps she'll examine it further spiritually when she has some time, or perhaps maybe larger quantities of chi.
As I understand it, I think I'd have to ask Brett to be sure, but as I recall, the rules for AIs essentially have a representation in the
Spiritual.
yes.
Yeah.
They don't have souls per se. They just have kind of a residual signature. You can give them souls, but that takes a lot of work, which we don't have here.
Okay. I could put a post in the Blue Book and just say like what Ziyi would see if she examined the AI using LifeSight, which
works.
Okay. And then we'll both know.
Exactly. Okay, so he's kind of like shakes his head a little bit at the brief cameo, and just says, "Yes, he's been instrumental. He was the primary project that myself and Miss Langley were working on when we made our departure."
Seems to be quite a successful project. She kind of looks over to the main pillar. Is that whole pillar its operating system?
Essentially, yes, but it's off-sourced some of the algorithms. He gestures at the 5 supporting VATs. That's why it's a hybrid, essentially.
It's kind of nods at that.
Organic decision-making processes are sometimes best left to organics.
Sometimes. Organics can be inherently flawed, I find. Or else I wouldn't have a job. She smiles again.
Yeah, that's true. He kind of smiles. So, it's good to see you again. Last night was a little vexing, to say the least.
Vexing, how so?
Well, where to begin? We had a string of unexpected visitors and expected visitors.
Unexpected visitors? I thought you mentioned the site was secret.
It's supposed to be. And apparently one of Asuka and I's co-workers survived the incident on the barge that had us arrive. You may have heard about it. There was a ship that imploded in the harbor. That was our arrival vessel.
Yeah, that's a bit of news that's hard to miss.
Yes, we didn't cause it, to be fair. Except indirectly, I suppose. They wanted to make sure there was nothing left of it, and they were very thorough. He apparently survived. He was knocked overboard, and his memory isn't quite intact. He hasn't contacted command, and he doesn't seem likely to. So he's essentially on our side. I'm going to have to investigate that a little bit further. I don't trust anything I don't fully understand in that regard. But we'll be thoroughly examining his memories and such if given the opportunity. In any case, first he arrived, and it was a dramatic entrance. He just kind of shakes his head. He tried bashing down the door and drawing a gun on us, which, given the greeting you received, I bet you can imagine how well that went.
Well, typically going in the front door isn't a sign of great intelligence.
No, I think he was still a little out of it. Apparently, he's been living, I don't know where, for the last month. But from the smell of it, nowhere pleasant. Um, as I said, he may need some significant mental work. In any case, while we were dealing with him, we had an arrival from our former our former landlords. Essentially, we were previously under the direction of the Order of Hermes, of the mage traditions. We were rooming with them until we found this lovely location. They apparently found that we had left something there, because apparently our security guards don't make very good movers and left a few crates worth of valuable items there.
Yikes.
Which we brought over. But as they did, it apparently drew another unexpected guest. He just shakes his head. There's now a girl living here. She calls herself Ava, and she has a very unusual pattern, but we're still investigating. According to the Hermetics, she's not likely to pose a threat, but we should keep her off the streets.
Well,
I don't.
you would know best.
I'd say they're the experts in this regard. It's some sort of spiritual matter, as I understand, not something I'm familiar with. Definitely outside my purview, but I'm always willing to learn. In any case, so on top of that, we had some other interesting things. I tried to make the best of the evening. Even took Ava to the Emerald Mother to show her around and make sure she knew who to talk to, and so on and so forth. And then had a lovely encounter with a midget and his masked friend.
I don't think that's the politically correct word anymore. She says with a bit of a smile. She's obviously trying to just tease you a little bit.
He understands. He's just like, whatever the politically correct term would be. They are, I believe, of the, what's it called? What's the word? Yes, the so-called fairies, the changelings.
I haven't heard much about these fairies, but I hear they can be chaotic.
Extremely, as I understand it, and they have an aversion to anyone who has a love for technology. Which obviously means myself and most of those who are present here would be anathema to them. I actually
Doesn't seem very practical in this day and age for them to have such a behavior.
This might be why most people have never heard of them. To be honest, I'd never heard of them until I arrived here. And I made it my job to study unusual life forms. So, yes, the fact that I'd never heard of them should say something. But the interaction was almost comical. You see, we've discovered through a little bit of trial and error between myself and the bartender that my aura, which I guess they would call my banality, it's high, of course, which is bad. They prefer people with low banality, who apparently, to have low banality, you must either be a child, be impaired, insane, drunk, high, or on some form of hallucinogens. All of these things will help to contribute to lowering one's banality.
And also, Z says, raising her finger in quite scientific fashion. And also might also give us into some insight into things that they prefer. Drugs, booze, wild debauchery.
The bartender specifically has a deal with me at this point. If I walk in and I want to, shall we say, get a little bit toasted, I get it practically on the house for the benefit of the other patrons. Not something I'm particularly fond of, but in the interests of not driving away anyone who might want to talk to Eve, I gave myself a little dose from a some sort of specially prepared blend they had, and it seemed to work. Yeah, I certainly felt the effects, and yet I still was apparently too banal for them. I ultimately had the masked fellow up in my face, getting very well. I believe I may have said something to upset him uh, when his diminutive friend walked in. How to explain this? The It was affecting me in an unusual way. Whatever it was they gave me, everything seemed a bit more humorous at the time. So when his little friend came in, I immediately started humming the Leonard Nimoy Bilbo Baggins song, which did not go over well. Somehow he got the reference, and he was not pleased with it, and he got very up close and personal, shall we say. So I used one of the local augments that they keep on hand to sober one up, essentially. Didn't seem to agree with him.
Smart plan.
Well, it keeps them at arm's reach. Or out of arm's reach, I should say. But in any case, yes, I don't know that much about them. I'm not sure I want to. If I have to become insane to understand something, it's probably best not understood.
Perhaps this is an area that I could accede to and poke around. I don't like having blind spots. Not to say that they will be one, but...
Well, there are... See, I've been wondering if I were to have to worry about people like that, they wouldn't want to come in here because this place is full of everything they hate, essentially. But I'm not sure I would rely on that to keep them away if needed. There might be other ways to create the aura that they despise and make it more tangible. I wouldn't want to use it against them outside of here, but if I used it here, it would render this place essentially impregnable to them, I would hope.
She smiles and she says, speaking of rendering this place impregnable, there are perhaps some rights that I can help with. The materials for them are quite rare. They will require some resources and time to acquire, but I could perhaps make this place a little bit more secure for anyone.
If you could explain the details at some point, I'm sure we could go over them at length. If your requirements are for rare minerals or materials, we can synthesize just about anything. If they're for something more, his grimace is esoteric in origin, such as a cat's paw dipped in holy water or something of that nature, I can't help with that. But any material needs we can synthesize here.
Perfect.
If you needed a gold necklace, well, I suck at jewelry design, but I can make the gold.
I'll have to send you my short list. The esoteric matters I can see to myself.
Okay, I'm sure we can coordinate on that. Anything that will help keep this place under wraps would be appreciated. There's also a fellow who said something about pattern spiders and weaving a web around the place, which would help hide it. I am not familiar with such things, but between that, whatever you have planned, and our own proprietary methods for dealing with such things, I think this place will be rather secure. Hopefully no more uninvited guests.
That's my primary concern, yes. It would be quite an embarrassment for the secret base to be less than secret.
Yes. It's one thing for our allies to be aware of it, but if nothing else, we may wind up building a secondary location that has a bit more discretion involved. Once we've established this one, that could be quite easily done.
That would be smart. This one will then serve as a very hard to find decoy.
Essentially, yes. But we'll worry about that later. Let's see. I'm afraid I haven't made any further. There have been no new developments, so to speak, as far as devices, but we have come up with a possible idea. I'm out of character. I'm not sure if he already told her about the bat idea.
Yes.
Oh, did he tell her about it?
Yeah, I think at our last at the dinner, we discussed the idea.
Oh yeah, okay. All right, in that case,
research comes in leaps and bounds, so it's totally not unheard of. The suit that you demonstrated at 3 dinners ago was quite impressive. So I don't need to be wooed by constant gifts, although they are the most surefire ways to a woman's heart.
Well, bear in mind, they wouldn't solely be for your benefit, of course. Such things would be useful for many people, but it would be useful.
She smiles like that. She was kind of joking, but she definitely kind of nods, of course.
Well.
So what about you? So does all work and no play make Demetria noble?
Well, most of the work lately has just been trying to tighten this place up. Trying to put in place certain things, like I said, to keep it out of sight. Other than that, and dealing with recent house guests, I haven't done too much. That's why I haven't contacted you for another dinner. But I suppose I should probably take the opportunity as it presents itself. Oh. There was something I was going to ask. What was it? It's escaping me. I've been studying. That was it. I've been studying a little bit to do with biochemistry lately, brushing up on it. It's an extension of my usual studies, I suppose, but it was worth reading up on. As well as being able to synthesize most inorganic compounds, now we can also synthesize any sort of drug that's blend is, shall we say, publicly available.
Mm-hmm.
So if its molecular composition is known, we can make it, at least in limited quantities. So, in layman's terms, if someone needs an elephant tranquilizer...
She smiles. Heroin. Do you think that'll be hard to make?
Probably not. He smiles. But I believe using our facilities to create illicit drugs might cause problems in the near future. That would be something I would want to put in a secondary base.
She holds up her hands defensively. You misunderstand me. Making illicit drugs are quite easy to make on the street. That's why there's so many of them. Sometimes it becomes necessary to make a batch of untraceable illegal drugs.
That makes much more sense. I was going to say, none of us really have the expertise for that sort of work anyways.
The expertise is quite below you. It's really easy. But it helps to know that.
It wouldn't be hard to make something like that, though I wouldn't want to make it necessarily harmful. I would consider that a little bit unfair. But we could easily make some sort of drug which is traceable, as you say, through some means.
She kind of nods. Just trying to seize all the possibilities, I think.
Creating a I'm actually planning on designing a sort of stimulant in the near future, something that might be useful for keeping people awake with less long-term issues, shall we say.
She smiles. She kind of steps forward a little bit closer to Dimitri. I always found that such matters were merely an exercise of discipline.
Well, it can be, but sometimes a little aid doesn't go awry. Some people prefer coffee. I prefer to go straight to the source.
Perhaps you're right. She says, and she kind of looks around the warehouse again. Which area do you work in?
That'd be over this way. He leads her away from Cabal and towards his section. There are rudimentary living quarters at this point, but they're basically just like probably the equivalent of like plywood cubicles and living quarters. They're very simply made at the moment. But his section has it has the suit, actually. She'll notice that it's hanging in a vat of its own, far less opaque liquid. And there's a smaller vat full of material that looks similar to it, probably what he based it off of. And so there's all sorts of files and chemicals and such. Very mad scientist look. But it's organized, unlike a mad scientist.
She kind of nods as she looks over the space. Looks like you excuse me, goodness. Looks like you spend quite a bit of time here.
I do. If I'm not studying or attempting to develop something. I do try to get out on occasion, though. Though, as I said, it doesn't always work out quite well. It's still worth the effort. Occasionally one meets some interesting people. He smiles.
Goodness. She smiles as well. She kind of looks back away to the center of the warehouse. So, if your previous night's events were any indicator, if someone were to breach this warehouse, what's the policy? What's the plan?
Depends on how they get in here. Most likely, we'd simply have to abandon most of our stuff here and get out as quickly as possible. Though, honestly, if anyone were to find this location, they would be able to trace it to other locations, and that could cause more problems. This is why we're working so hard to keep this place off the grid and erase records of it. There are ways to do it, and we're working on it. But what disturbs me is that the fellow who was on the boat, who has issues with his memory, from what he said, he found this location by talking to a contact of his and simply giving my name. My name shouldn't be connected to this location. My name shouldn't be connected to anything in the city.
His contact, you have to figure out who that contact is.
I'll have to ask him about that. That might be the price of him staying here. I'm not planning on destroying his contact. Such things are wasteful. But we might want to make sure that whatever leak we have is stopped up. It might simply be a piece of paperwork someone overlooked or foolishly filled out.
Exactly. I find sometimes the worst case, the worst breaches are simply something overlooked that is quite small.
Bureaucratic in nature, yes. Well, I hope you like the facility. It's nothing to write home about yet, but we've got plans for it. Since we can synthesize our own materials and construct them as we wish, before long we'll have a multi-floored little complex here. It's a sizable warehouse, after all. We're not using much of the space. He gestures upwards.
She smiles and she will gesture forward to Dimitri. Says it seems to be a suitable backdrop for the obvious star of the show.
Sorry, you cut out for a second.
She says it seems to be a suitable backdrop to the obvious star of the show.
He kind of grimaces a bit. While I'm used to being project leader, I don't particularly want the glory of such a position. Besides, leading this ragtag group is not the same thing as having any sort of influence within the city.
No, and it shouldn't be.
He kind of hesitates. If you're familiar with the Tarot Council they've been discussing, I've already asked a little bit about one of the positions, the arcana known as the Tower. He kind of grins, which is ironic because the Tower is what the technocracy is known as. It's actually, I would have assumed otherwise the Tower, for that reason, would be left blank. But apparently it's in use by one of your people. He gives a name. Oz something? I can't remember it out of character. But he gives the name. Apparently she is a expert in tactical matters, warfare, and the like. A strategic thinker, apparently, is exactly what is required of the Tower.
Mm.
Something I could aspire to.
Something we all should aspire to.
Managing a group like this and keeping it flowing smoothly would be an exercise in strategic thinking, if nothing else.
Agreed.
Or in herding cats, one or the other.
Perhaps strategically hurting cats. She says that's a compromise. So, acquired the position as the Tower of the City. She kind of squints her eyes. I'm not sure if that sounds like a short-term or long-term goal.
Given it's currently occupied, it would most likely be long-term. I'm not planning on stealing the position. I would have to discuss the matter with the person currently holding it. As I said, I have yet to meet them, but they sound like an interesting individual. I'll have to arrange a meeting shortly. Getting in touch with the hosts at the Emerald Mother would be the easiest way, I imagine. And if they're willing to see me, we can see what happens from there. But it might be interesting. It would definitely foster good relations if I were to become, say, an apprentice to one of... he kind of nods towards her. If I gather the appropriate term is... I've heard multiple terms. I've heard the word Kuei Jin. Is that your word, or is that the word of an outsider?
It's a suitable term. It varies from region to prefecture to kindred to the culture of the society that we're currently residing in. Like many things, we have many different names, but this is one commonly that we use.
No, it would be a good diplomatic effort to foster ties with the Kuei Jin in that manner. I've already got some ties with the vampires, though they're not exactly, kind of tilts it a little bit. They're not unbreakable ties, but I'm hoping to keep things pleasant between myself and both parties. I believe any interaction between myself and the other tradition mages is doomed to be civil at best. There's too much bad history there.
Well, if you like the idea of herding cats, then I would recommend that you proceed with your goals at achieving diplomatic ties with the Kuei Jin with due earnest, because it may seem to be just like that. It may seem to be herding cats because we're quite a group of traditionalists and we're slow to changing our opinions unless you have a couple centuries to commit to such a task.
He kind of smiles. That's oddly comforting. I'm sure there'll be some solution to it.
I'm sure.
But for right now, I'll simply worry about getting a hold of the current person holding that position and see what they have to say on the matter. So, He kind of takes a breath and looks around. I don't know about you, but I could use a chance to get out of here for a bit. Perhaps I could take you out to dinner? Or would you prefer it at your place?
She kind of smiles and purses her lips. Oh, I am feeling quite peckish.
I'm sure we can figure a suitable location then. He offers her his arm and starts escorting her outside.
And she entwines her arm within his and follows.
And unless we got anything else, that's probably a good place to end the scene.
I think that sounds perfect.
All right. Thank you, players for players, watchers for watching, and have a good evening.